Ladies and gentlemen, it is 1 o'clock. We will now reconvene our meeting. On page 13 of your books is the next point of discussion. Continue with our action items, and we do have one capital project full discussion today. It's the Purdue University West Lafayette Aspire purchase. And it's on page 13, and we're very pleased to have Alicia Esker, Director of Government Relations and Fiscal Policy from Purdue University, that's going to be here to share the highlights of this project. Alicia.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. So today before you, you have the Aspire acquisition. Purdue's Board of Trustees recently approved acquisition of the Aspire property. This property may seem or sound familiar to you, as it actually went through as one of our leases in the spring for the 2022-2023 academic year. So specifically, our board has approved the purchase of the 3-building, 4-story, 387,000 square feet housing complex on 4.8 acres. And we will be purchasing that from the Purdue Research Foundation. And in this particular instance, PRF is providing a service to the university for which it was specifically designed to be nimble when it comes to real estate transactions. So just a little overview of our housing inventory. We have about 14,000 on-campus university beds currently, with about 1,577 lease beds. So currently the Aspire complex has 831 beds. Those are in 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 4-bedroom configurations. So after our 2022-2023 lease term ends, it's likely that we will opt to then densify the beds in the apartment complex, and that's dependent upon the fire marshal, but I think we're aiming at around 1,200 beds as opposed to the 831 beds. It's important to note that the rates for this new building will be approved by our Board of Trustees prior to finalization, but we anticipate offering the majority of beds in Aspire at rates that are less than or equal to the current Aspire rates. Just a little bit on our housing demand. So at Purdue, we have a high demand for on-campus university housing. Our undergrad students, 1st to 2nd year retention rate, overall GPA, they are higher for those students living on campus. I also want to go over a little bit about our long-term strategy when it comes to housing. So last fall, Purdue actually welcomed our largest incoming class ever at 10,191 students. That's a larger number than we were anticipating based on historical data, yield percentages, other application trends that we've been seeing. So because of that, that's put a lot of pressure on the campus and our physical capacity constraints. It's still early, but we are projecting a number close to 38,000 undergraduates for the fall. Just to give you some sense of how that compares to last year, we had about 37,000 undergrads in last fall, so 2021. And then over the last 5 years, we have increased our enrollment 19%. So this purchase is in an important strategic location. It's adjacent to some current housing and dining. It's actually across the street from other current housing. And we are also in the process of updating the housing and dining master plan for the university based on enrollment growth, the success of our living and learning communities, and then our residential retail dining strategy. So this updated master plan will evaluate and plan for additional new residence halls potentially, the demolition of current residence halls, and then strategic renewals and replacement of dining facilities. This purchase that's before you today, it solves a near-term problem that we have. We're able to increase our housing capacity right now, rather than waiting for 3 years for another housing unit to be built and then come online and available for students. Just a little bit about the cost of the acquisition that's before you today. So the total cost is $155 million to be paid from using $125 million of non-fee replaced debt. That's coming from our housing and dining revenue. And then $25 million of auxiliary funds for housing and dining that we currently have on hand, along with $5 million of gift funds. So the estimated annual debt payment is around $6 million for this purchase. However, with the purchase, we would then also be eliminating a lease expense of $5 million. So I know that you've seen a few of our projects that we've brought before you, and those have been used for with reserves. So unlike that, we are taking on some new debt with this project, but it's important to note that we have an ongoing revenue stream from the students who will be living in there to cover these debt payments. Another important thing to note is that there was a competitive bidding process for the project. There are at least 5 bids placed, and then of those, 3 of them, one being Purdue, was asked to give the final and best offer. And in that process, it was actually the university who entered into the process initially. But then as we were giving our best and final offer, it became apparent to us that a combined effort with PRF, Purdue Research Foundation, was going to be necessary because of the sellers imposed deadlines of closing, which were something the university on its own could not comply with because we have to go to through the state approval process. So that is why you see before you the university purchasing this land and the complex from PRF, our foundation. Just another point on that, with regards to comparables, so we worked closely with JLL and their experts to determine the appropriate purchase price. Because an acquisition of this type is quite unique for a higher ed institution, we looked at comparable investment sales from 2020 and 2021 in areas that are similar to Purdue University. So also in Bloomington, I believe another one was in Madison, Wisconsin. And so what we found were 5 comparable sales that had an average cost per bed of $136,000. It is our hope that once we densify the Aspire building, we could ultimately have an average cost per bed of $127,000, which is a little less than those 5 that we were looking at. So with this unique opportunity, the university has spent considerable efforts, financial modeling this purchase justification prior to bidding, and we are confident in the purchase price based on both densified and undensified scenarios. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good. Thank you, Alicia. Questions? Thank you very much, Alicia. And Seth, you want to give the staff's perspective, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I saw that come on the list. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Budget Productivity Committee met earlier this week to review and discuss this process, of which I know you're aware because you were a part of that conversation. I think Alicia's done a good job responding to a lot of the questions and feedback that the committee had for her during that presentation. One thing I do want to highlight, I know she touched on this, but it's just as a reminder, Purdue is currently entered into lease agreements with this property for several years, as recently as earlier this year. And so what I don't know that she spent much time talking about is long-term, there's a very high likelihood for savings to the institution moving forward with this model as opposed to continuing to lease that space. And so with that understanding, staff recommends approval of this project.
Very good. Thank you, Seth. Questions? I have a motion then for approval. Second. Second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alicia. Also, on page 21, we have one additional project that's for expedited action, dealing with a variety of repair and maintenance initiatives at multiple regional campuses of Indiana University. So again, that was reviewed by the Budget Productivity Committee. For expedited action does not need formal presentation. But I would ask for a motion to approve it on an expedited basis. So moved. Second. Second, Tom. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That is approved as well. Thank you very much. Now we'll move back down to our academic affairs items, and we'll start it off with Dr. Burgers just to provide an overview of the academic affairs last committee, and we'll move into some other reports from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Academic Affairs and Quality Committee met on July 25th. There were a variety of usual agenda items, including things about programs awaiting action, and I think that's included as information item A in the agenda book. There was some consideration of the 2 degree programs that are on the agenda for today's meeting. So we'll hear about those in a bit. And then there were a few other items, one of which we've already heard about, which is the school finder tool, and the other 2 are also on the agenda for today. It's the prior learning assessment piece and also the SAT, ACT admission requirement stuff. So we covered all of those things in our July 25th meeting.
Okay, great, very good. Thanks, I appreciate that very much. So with that, let's go ahead and hear a little bit more about the credit for prior learning data collection as prescribed by AGA 1549. And with that, we have Dr. Sauer and Dawn Park are going to make a presentation and share some information.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. So let's just start out by trying to make sure we're anchoring this in the context of the larger goals and ambitions of the commission. This is a way to increase attainment, especially for adults. This CPL, as we like to refer to it as in the shorthand way, is a way to recognize learning that has taken place outside the classroom. All recognize these days that a lot of learning takes place outside the classroom. Credit for prior learning, CPL is a way to recognize that. The intent here is to make students, learners aware of what CPL options are available to them. That's what this clearinghouse is all about. And again, it's especially useful to adults who have picked up a lot of the training and experience outside of the classroom. So with that, we're just going to go through the legislative mandate very briefly, tell about the work that's done in Indiana that led up to this clearinghouse, types of CPL, and then Dawn will demonstrate all of the information that is now on the transfer in website. And really want to thank Dawn for her leadership in this project and in getting all of this information organized and put on the transfer in website. So with that, HCA 1549 was passed in the 2021 session of the General Assembly. Soon after the legislation was passed, through a mixture of federal, state funds, there was support to have Thomas P. Miller and Associates help with gathering information about credit for prior learning. This resulted actually in a report which we used in the last 6 months or so to flesh out what information would be put on the Commission's website, transfer-in website, that would constitute this clearinghouse. Thomas P. Miller also engaged CALE, which is the way we pronounce the acronym for the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning, which is the premier professional organization that deals with adult and experiential learning. It's been around almost 50 years now, and it is highly respected in this area. Most institutions embrace the principles that CALE promotes with respect to credit for prior learning, and we were fortunate to have the assistance of CALE in helping us think through and organize all of the CPL opportunities within the state. We also put together a task force, and the institutions were well represented on that, but other individuals were represented as well, and that helped to guide this work as well. And then in the closing months of this activity, all of the institutions were engaged in making sure that information about CPL was available and would be added to this CPL clearinghouse on the Commission's website. And STAT, which is now a statutory body, the Statewide Transfer and Articulation Committee, was also involved in this work. So what are the types of CPL? There are multiple exams. I said primarily adults, but the reason why I said primarily that CPL is useful primarily to adults is because high school students, by taking advanced placement exams, also generate credit for prior learning. This AP classes are not dual credit classes. They don't automatically result in credit for a particular course. One has to score a 3 or better on the AP exam in order to get that credit. So in that sense, it is considered credit for prior learning. The Dante's, which is available to veterans and actually active duty members of the military too, can take these exams, and again, scores will translate into credit for particular exams. International Baccalaureate, Cambridge, these are other ways in which individuals, students can take exams and earn credit for particular courses. There are particular institutional or departmental exams that are available in many cases that someone can take in order to get credit for a particular course. And that's true in many disciplines, including world languages. Then there's also, in addition to all of these fairly standard exams, there is also the individualized assessment that are made through portfolios. Individuals who, through a lot of life experience, one can certainly think in terms of people who start their own businesses, for example, and wish to expand marketing, to expand their business, and therefore want to pursue a degree. Well, those individuals obviously have had some experience in entrepreneurship, introduction to business affairs. They ought to be able to get some credit for what they have done by setting up their own business and gaining a lot of experience through that. So, but this really requires a portfolio. So and institutions have put together, in some cases, courses, but certainly guidelines that would help someone with that type of experience to structure how they would document and communicate the experiences that they have had, which would be eligible for receiving credit for particular courses. In addition to that, there are some other tools that are out there. We do have the American Council of Education, ACE, has recommendations with respect to military and industry training. And these are important reference points, guidelines that also figure into how somebody can earn credit based on prior learning. And these are important to have referenced and used as well in order to provide a way in which individuals can get credit for prior learning. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Dawn.
So we have a clearinghouse on transfer in, and our transfer in website not only has the clearinghouse, but also has all our information about our transfer initiatives here in our state. So the core transfer library, the Indiana College Core, information about the transfer single articulation pathways. And of course, we had the AP, the advanced placement equivalencies and the FLEP equivalencies, but that's been incorporated on our clearinghouse page as well. So this is the home page. This is the homepage of Transfer In. It just so happens that we have a military slider. There are several different sliders featuring the core transfer library and Indiana College Core, but I do want to indicate to users that we do have information on there about the military credits and how that they can utilize them. So that little box with the arrow for a user to find that credit for prior learning information on Transfer In, they're going to go to that earned credits question mark. And when they go to that, they're going to scroll, and there's going to be all different ways that you can earn credit, like I mentioned, the core transfer library and et cetera. So what we're going to be highlighting today is the credit for prior learning. So we have a little blurb about what that actually means. And then of course, if someone puts it in the search engine, it's going to come up and be easily found whether or not they go through the ways to earn credit or not. And then they can click on Learn More. So that is where it's going to take them to the specific information about the clearinghouse homepage. And so we have it all organized by exams. And as Ken mentioned, there's different types of exams. We're highlighting the AP and the FLEP databases on the next screenshot, but there's also links to Dante's and links to Cambridge International and all those other ways that students can earn credit by exam. So just want to draw your attention to the AP and FLEP databases, and we have ways that students can click on those. And then, so this is the AP database, and we're using Ball State in this case. And I don't know, I just want to make sure that we highlighted all of the work that we've done with the equivalence between FLEP and AP. So all of the institutions have identified courses based on the scores that students earn about the courses that the exams that translate into course credit and the credit that they will receive. So that's a lot of work we've done on that. We do keep it maintained, updated twice a year. So again, that's another great resource for students. And so when they have all the other ways to, that they can go through the page and see that they can earn credit, what was really kind of the meat of it is where they go to find it. So we have worked with the institutions and the staff committee, the statewide transfer and articulation committee. All the institutions agreed that they would create a well-structured homepage, landing page with all the information that students need to know about credit for prior learning if they choose to attend that institution. And so prior learning, will my military help me? What are the fees involved? Some students may not even realize that there's fees. Where do I go to find the info? I know that sometimes it can be a little overwhelming with a large institutional website or a big school. So this points them directly to that specific website. And who to contact, that was a big thing. Sometimes it's hard to know who to reach out to. Is this an office? Is it a person? So we wanted to make sure that the institutions had clear information about who to contact at each institution. So when you would click on one of those, I've got a couple of examples and some pages that are like best practices in our opinion. So this is IUPUI, and they've done a really nice job of creating a contact form. And they develop the information, specifically what they're interested in, and then they can even write some more descriptive things about their goals. And so again, the student knows that it's getting sent off, that they're hopefully going to get their specific answer, get the answer to their question via this form. Again, some of the institutions actually have a number and a contact person, or just a general email mailbox that their questions will be sent to. So fees was also a very important feature. We want to make sure students know what they're getting into and how much they're going to be paying for these exams. Are there transcription fees? Are there fees at all as far as like for the military? Typically, there is no fee for that. And portfolio assessments can be they can range from $50 up to $1,500 depending on the institution. So Ivy Tech has done a really nice job of outlining their fees that associated with each of the assessments. And they have links that go to each assessment for further information about equivalencies. And so we like to feature best practices. So again, they've done a really nice job. It's very easy for students to figure out what they're going to have to be paying. And then again, Vincent's has a pretty nice page too, but I just wanted to show the difference. All articulated credit is $25 per credit hour. So it's very streamlined, very easy to understand, very consistent. And again, they have no fees associated with any kind of military assessment. IU Kokomo, another good best practice, and just showing you kind of the differences between the fees. They have a flat fee for $21.50 per credit hour. That's the maximum of 5 credits per class, so that's only going to be a maximum of $107 cost per course. So they have that outlined on their website as well. And again, we always talk about military training, and Purdue Global has a great page. They have a whole department devoted to the military training and assessment. They actually have a database that you can go through and see your different branches of the military and how your applicational service will translate into credit. And again, they have a great contact information, and they have really done a nice job of even showing the degrees that match to the occupational, and I'm not thinking of the word that they use in the military, the
MLS.
MLS.
Military application.
Yes, MOS. So they have a database for that as well.
Just one quick comment. Purdue Global is highly Army centric. And so as an Air Force person going through there just for grins, it did not do well for me. So I told Frank that they need to make that a little more, less Army centric.
Well, that's good to know, because just for a layperson that went through the job down, they have it, but I wouldn't have known whether or not, how comprehensive that information was. So that's good to know. And just kind of breezing through here again, IU Limited, they also have a real step-by-step guide, how to apply, what to send, the sources of CPL. So just highlighting some of those pages that we've done. We're going to be making sure that we update those, make sure the links are updated and more information as we go along. We'd also like to see the institutions improve some of the information that they have on their websites. Sometimes just navigating credit for prior learning in this whole process, I don't know if many people know that Ivy Tech has created a certification crosswalk. So they have actually, if I'm a student, have a certified administration professional, a certificate, a CAP. There's at least 9 credits in that certificate or that certification that will equate to up to 9 credits, but 9 of those credits are in the Associate of Business Administration. So already they've got head start on getting some credit if they were going to be working towards the degree. And some students may not know that, and so it's kind of a stackable opportunity. And again, just wanting to make sure that that idea of work experience and that you have a portfolio, if you're a small business owner and you have your business and you want to grow your business, but you think you need to take classes for marketing or business or something like that, you may have already been able to breeze through Business 101 or Marketing 101 if you know the right people to go to see if that assessment will equate into credit. So I think that's really all we have about transfer in. If there's any questions about the clearinghouse or the information on there, I think that's.
I just wanted to make one point about Dawn's reference to certifications. They have they've done a great job in identifying, I believe it's more than 400 different industry and certifications that can translate into course credit, specific course credit. That's exactly the kind of information that we'd like to integrate in this clearinghouse, as well as the Indiana Credential Registry, because it is a way in which students would be able to get credit for prior learning in the form of those industry and professional certifications.
Yes, just a very quick comment. By the way, I recognize it was just after lunch, and it's going to also be kind of a dry topic, but credit for prior learning, I am absolutely convinced, and also having been to a wonderful presentation yesterday in Indianapolis at the convening of the SHIO policy conference, credit for prior learning is a secret weapon, if you will, in our challenge in skilling up the adult population in Indiana. I would start just a real quick point that one place at which we can start is just honoring adults who wish to pursue training and education and recognizing the skills they bring to the table already. A favorite example of mine, and I'll make it about 20 seconds, is someone who goes to, say, get a business degree and goes to an institution and they start showing her or him the 100 level courses and then asks, so what have you been doing all your career? And the person humbly says, well, I work in a business. Well, what do you do? Well, I started it 40 years ago with my family, and right, I've done everything, but be the attorney and the CFO, everything. And they still say, well, and this is the 100 level course you'll take, and so forth. And meanwhile, this person employs 1,000 people in 3 or 4 states, and 2 or 3 countries, and $250 million in revenue. By the way, that's a friend of mine. And we would perhaps pat the person on the head and say, and here it is, the 100 level course. I'm dramatizing, right? But the fact of the matter is, that's someone who could run the entire department. This is a secret weapon for Indiana. For Ken and Dawn, they've heard this a lot. And I'm sure, especially commission members, our 3 finalists for the adult strategy position heard this. We are setting the audacious goal to be the leading state in the United States with credit for prior learning and really focusing on 3 things: being robust, high quality, accessible, and affordable. And we're just going to be bold with all of you today and say that is the direction we're going to head with this, because again, I remind you, we have 1.938 billion future working age adults who only have the credential, if you will, the high school diploma, but they have so much more than that has not been taken into account. We're very serious about, again, a topic that feels a little dry right after lunch, but it's really, really important. Ken and Dawn, thank you. Questions, comments?
And thank you very much, Don and Dr. Sauer, for that presentation, and I agree, there's such a great opportunity there, so it's wonderful. Thank you. Very good. Well, if you recall, at our last meeting, we talked about the SAT and ACT admissions requirements at our public institutions. And now we're going to have Dr. Sauer continue to educate us, along with Jessica Barrett, provide an overview of the findings that they found regarding those SAT, ACT admissions. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
Yeah, and just probably just a minute, literally, of comments here, but this is simply as a result of the conversation that took place at the last commission meeting, and you, Mr. Chairman, suggested, I think this was in the context of the readiness and cut score discussion, and you suggested that it would be a good idea if the Academic Affairs and Quality Committee could take a look at the way in which institutions use SAT scores. We added ACT into the conversation as well. So to that end, and we put together a very short survey, just a couple of questions, and because we wanted to be very responsive to your request and come back to you at this meeting and show the results. So I appreciate Jessica's work on this, who put out the survey and put together all of the results, and she'll go over those in a minute. I will only say that in retrospect, we probably, if the commission is interested in taking additional steps, and that obviously is up to you all to decide, but there are probably a couple of other questions in retrospect that it would have been good to ask. But in the spirit of being responsive and getting back to you very quickly on the questions that you asked, we wanted to have a survey and get those results back with. So with that, Jessica is going to go through the results.
Okay, thank you. And I will echo what Ken said. We did ask the institutions to respond fairly quickly so we could get a good turnaround. So we kept it brief to two main questions. The first one was, we just wanted to know what the admissions policies are for the current admission year regarding SAT and ACT scores. So the first question we ask is, does your institution currently use those test scores in the admissions process? And that's the way it was framed. It was not framed of, do you require admission or SAT, ACT scores? So of 5 of our institutions, so there were a total of 16 that responded, all of the public campuses. 5 of those said no, and 11 of them said yes. And this is the percentage breakdown that you see here. And I'll go into the details here. The institutions that answered no, of course, are 2-year institutions, Ivy Tech and Vincennes, do not require that or do not use those in admissions. And then we have 3 4-year institutions that answered no, Indiana State, Purdue Global, and then Purdue University Fort Wayne. And then here are the yeses. And surprisingly, so at all the other institutions, surprisingly, you'll see that thing I added in the middle, the circle that says optional. When I broke down the results and I looked at all of the admissions policies, they all have links to the websites. All of these policies can be found on institution websites. So they're there, they're easy to find. A lot of times they're the first thing you see when you get on a website, like ready to apply. So I will say, they're very easy to find, but all of the institutions, this was a surprising finding that we thought are under optional admission or SAT, ACT admission policies right now. I'm going to read just a few of the comments that were submitted as a result of this questions. A few of them, like somebody said, we shifted to test optional in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I think that's a very pervasive practice right now. Somebody said, we do not require test scores, but we use them as part of a comprehensive review process. Several of them echoed that same sentiment. And then I think it was IU Kokomo said they use them to award scholarships, and we'll get into that in just a minute. So I'm going to go into the next. So here are some of the reasons that they do use the test scores: course placement, scholarships, admission to certain degree programs. I know that Purdue Fort Wayne, or one of the Purdue, sorry, indicated that if they want to get direct admission into the engineering program, they're going to need those test scores. And then something interesting that I hadn't thought of is if you're coming from a homeschool situation, you're going to need those test scores to get admitted to the institution probably. And then finally, our next question was, are there any changes that you're considering for the next academic admission year? And only one institution said yes, that they are considering a change in the policy, but I'm gonna put a little asterisk next to that. Let's see, it was Purdue Northwest, and they said their test optional policy, which is what it is now, is just going to become permanent. So, I mean, it's, in my eyes, that's not really a change. So, it looked to me like they're all pretty much, doing the optional thing. And just, I wanted to stress that, it seems to be written out that it's up to the student, whether or not they want to submit their test scores. So, we welcome any questions, or as Ken said, I think once we got the results, we thought, maybe we should have asked this, or we would like to clarify certain things, because it is, I think, a complicated process. And, you know, it's just, there are certain things, and if there's anything else you want to know, we can definitely go back to our partners at the institutions and go from there. So, thank you.
Kind of off the bat, do we know, does it help the student or hurt the student to submit or to not submit with it becoming optional? Is there enough data there yet to even know in those competitive environments of, am I going to get in, am I not? Should I submit? Should I, that's kind of the.
I thought the same exact thing, and I did want to point out, one of the comments that I wrote down was from Purdue West Lafayette. And this is written out in their policy. It says students who cannot submit test scores will be given equal consideration for admission. I think it is, from a layperson perspective and a parent, I think it would be hard to decide, should I submit those test scores, should I not? But all of the messaging from the institutions seem to be, it's just a part of a comprehensive review. I mean, they look at all of the things that we know that they look at. Grade point average, what kind of classes they're taking, their whole transcript and the whole person. So this is just a slice of what they're using. So I don't know. I mean, I guess it's optional. It's up to the student. Somebody has to make that choice.
Thank you. Great work.
Yeah, on that point, one of the questions that I guess, in retrospect, I wish we would have asked was something like, of those students who apply, how many actually submit their scores? And in addition, of those students, how many are actually admitted? I think that would have been an interesting set of follow-up questions.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's timely also to put a bit of a fine point on some of the data around the SAT cut scores, and this is the reason why. Each year, the Department of Education, as we've talked about a little bit, is required to use test scores and set proficiency benchmarks. They have adopted, including formally yesterday as a state board, what the College Board recommends, of course, College Board being those who administer SAT. As those benchmarks, 530 or higher at the math section and 480 or higher at the reading and writing section. We can send this out to you. So again, those are the College Board recommended and now adopted by DOE. This is what's important to note. Almost all 11th graders this past year, some in excess of 76,000, took the SAT. These are the results, and this also underlines why this commission, this agency, Department of Education, Secretary General and her team, myself and our team are working so closely together. So almost all juniors took. 52% of Indiana's 11th graders met or exceeded the reading and writing. 32% of those students met or exceeded the math benchmarks. Not a lot needs to be said yet on that. We have challenges, and this is one of the reasons we're working so closely with Secretary Jenner. She has a very aggressive agenda to begin looking at, and I know some of you have been involved in that, at a multiple fronts that lead to those beginning very early in a student's education. But again, these, as to quote Katie Jenner, these are challenges we're not going to admire. We're going to go after them. She is doing that, and we're doing that in partnership with her, but you should know those numbers will also send us out.
Well, thank you for that information and that survey and the quick response. And I get, in light of the COVID and the circumstances we've had, I mean, it's a little unusual. It's good to see that, that they're optional, but at the same time, I assume they're relying much more on class placements and K through 12, really, high school GPA is more so than anything else. It would be interesting to know how those correlate, the test scores and the GPAs, and whether indeed those perceived successful students in high school with first GPA really are able to matriculate that into higher SAT and ACT scores as well. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I actually want to follow up on our commissioners' comments just about some of the challenges, because the reality is I've been reflecting on the presentation from 9 o'clock this morning from the college completion report. And again, our commissioner has inspired me because he's challenged that he's come in challenging, and he's talked about Commissioner Jenner and the challenges of some of this sobering data. So a rhetorical question and then a suggestion. Are these numbers so low because at some point we have fallen into a malaise of mediocrity, and because the culture has set it, then we've fallen in line? See it repeatedly, then do you really just begin to accept that 50 and 40 is okay because it's become so inculcated and so normalized, versus saying this is hurtful and no one worth their money would invest in these types of results? And then I look at the African-American performance where on your best year, you never get to the level of someone performing in their worst year. So I think there's an opportunity to challenge our culture and just have we accepted failure. And I think that's what begins to make these meetings worthwhile. We can really challenge the standard. I think, in terms of a humble suggestion, I think our society is in need of an education propaedutics class. There's this common statement, trite statement in investing, that as a general rule, you don't invest in what you don't understand. And I think you'll find thousands of young people, no fault of their own, that, well, I don't go to school and I don't invest in class and I don't do homework because, well, you advise me not to invest in what I don't understand. An education propaedutics class is tantamount to an art appreciation class or a dance appreciation class, where you don't start talking about how you do this. You begin by talking about what it is and why it's such a big deal, and why other people consider it to be such a big deal. And then you allow people to ask questions and begin to formulate thought. So there are a number of young people who have never had an education on an education. And my education here at 16 years on the commission is that if I haven't picked up anything, I picked up that I have come into an environment where people appreciate an education. They've had an education appreciation class somewhere, then it caught fire. Well, I'm mindful that there are, again, thousands who have never had an education appreciation class. And so consequently, I don't understand what you understand, so I don't appreciate what you appreciate. I don't value what you value, so I'm not going to invest where you invest. So I think with Secretary of Education Jenner, the fine media people and communications people we have, I think an opportunity is to gradually begin to go out and educate and inform. In fact, I would contend that I sit here and always I'm wrapped with attention and pages and notes because for most of our mission higher education meetings, we actually conduct propaedeutic classes. We give data, we give insight, we give context, we give perspective. And learning incites learning, and learning invokes curiosity, and somebody goes and reads and somebody says, can you leave that, leave that? And again, at the same time, you're mindful that there are people that we consider, that we are concerned about who are reflected in this horrific data, that not only are they not having those sessions, but they're probably oftentimes having something that says, do not engage. So I think that's the challenge before us, but I also think that's the opportunity before us if we understand that it's not just so much that I'm not committed, it's that I don't understand what this is. And I think we begin to approach it differently. And not because once you begin to do it, then I think people begin to say, oh, is that what it is? Huh. Oh, is that how it works? Oh, I didn't know that. How challenged if you go through a K through 12 system and see if you can find one class that actually talks about why education. Again, this is what an education is, and this is how it works, and this is how people leverage it, and this is how it's actually used as currency. Just like Chuck E. Cheese, and they're actually making deals and exchanges, and they're used, and they're shifting, and they're bargaining. So I'm like, hey, whoa, really? Whoa, wow, no. I think you begin to see class attendance increase, family engagement increase. But again, I think a big assumption is that because we've had it, there are people who also have it. Well, a number of people have never had it. And so they're just happy to get the drink, a number of them, if somebody takes the time to appreciate that they've never been exposed. So thanks for indulging me.
Dennis, thank you very much. Those are very prescient comments. And I think it's been proven, I mean, with your Center for Leadership Development, that you have put those kind of programs in place in your organization, and the success you have going rate is tremendous. Likewise, if you look at our 21st Century Scholars Program, it's evident. So it's a matter of educating younger people at a younger age and catching them before they start hearing the perspective that education does not have value, but teaching them that it does indeed, is where it really catches on, and maybe including, enrolling all, everybody in that scholars program, as you talked about, Chris, can certainly have an impact, working with, the education secretary to do exactly as you suggest. Let's have some program that shows here's the value of an education so that they learn that, but it is a cultural challenge. And I think as we look at the demographics, as we've seen, so much of the time it's the rural communities or, the, lower income communities that where we're really, that equity element is where we're suffering the greatest. Yeah.
Yeah, I think to focus specifically on the SAT, ACT issue, I have to say I'm a bit of a skeptic about holistic admission processes, because eventually decisions and recommendations are made by actual people who, regardless of what the institution's stated practice is, may prioritize one piece of information over another when making an admissions recommendation. And depending upon that person's mental model of what makes a good candidate for admission to an institution or a particular major, the SAT and ACT may hold more prominence or may not. And knowing about the number of applications that some institutions receive and the army of people that are involved in reviewing them, inevitably, I think it's a reasonable question to ask about the consistency of how the holistic review is executed. Having worked at a couple of different institutions, I've seen different ways that that works, right? And I think it's particularly challenging because there's some pretty reasonable evidence that the SAT and the ACT are privileged measures to begin with, which reinforce lots of things that we would rather not see in terms of admissions processes, in terms of who has access to, who has resources to support SAT prep classes, for example. Right? So there are lots of really good reasons to think about this. And I think this is another case where the numbers are a really useful starting place for a much deeper conversation about how to address this. So anyway, I wanted to sort of weigh in from the faculty side that there's a lot of open questions on our side of this as well. Forget about the high level policy side.
I have to tell. Oh, I just a little funny story to piggyback on Dennis's very eloquent comments. So Connie Rice, when she was 3 years old, her parents put her in first grade. You're talking about emphasizing education. Now, now, she didn't succeed, so they had to pull her out and then put her back in when she was 5 or 6. But anyway, she obviously was taught early on how important education served her well in certain country in the world.
Wanted to add, building off of your pieces there, the part of using AI technology in the admissions process going forward too, I think is also, you know, as it becomes less of a human looking at that and more of a technology piece that is programmed, however, by a human, you know, what is going to be way more in the system. So that could be a question at what universities are using AI pieces to determine admission factors. And, you know, you can actually scale that though to a model and see what they do value more once you break it down. So just a thought there, because I think that's happening in every part of our world, that technology is very prevalent.
And just one addition to Dennis's comments that I can't help but reflect on, then that how and why it's important. I think who delivers that message is equally, if not more important, because we've spoken so much about social credit. But I think street credibility is equally as valuable to some, if not more. So who delivers that message may be the driver.
Mr. Chairman, can I also just make a comment about Dennis's statement? I say it's Dennis's statement because I don't take it as a comment, but I take it as a call to action. And so is it possible to do some benchmarking or look into methods that have been successful to help address what he's bringing up is it's a huge idea, but it's fundamental to being successful in the future. I think we often talk about this disconnect and misunderstanding about the value of higher education. I think it's incredibly important to consider how we would go about putting something together that is in fact achievable, pragmatic, and fundable. And so I just want to ask if I hate to ask them to work on anybody's staff, but if we can get some data and make this a conversation that we have going forward until we figure out how to do something about it, I would appreciate that.
The answer is yes. I have to share just a couple of quick comments, and I'll start, Dennis, with you. You and I've had similar conversations before. First and foremost, thank you for bringing clarity to the work that I believe goes on with this commission and what you charge those of us who are employed to do this work. That's oftentimes, thank you for the clarity. I think your choice of words is so incredible, especially about culture and about challenges and opportunities. What we haven't shared with you today, we'll, with Ann Charlie Baser, we'll likely share, I'm hopeful to share beginning in September, a bit more You will probably recall, at least for those of you who were members of the commission at the time, in June, there was a report on the ed value research and what we were looking at and are looking at from a marketing advertising standpoint, if you will. Since that time, again, I don't want to share too much yet, but we've been bringing together partners from the business community, philanthropic, non-for-profit, and I would characterize what we've been talking about, and I'm looking back at Charlie Baser, because she's been right at the center of this, is moving from what we perceive as the need to talk about and have an ed value marketing approach to a culture. We've been using that word repeatedly in the last probably 2 weeks, to a cultural sea change. So your request, Bill, is literally right in line with what we have been having meetings about and talking about, but it's substantially larger than putting some facts in the hands of people who, right, can help us communicate all of that important. So more to come on that. Thanks for the homework. We think we've been doing some early studying, but probably not there yet. And then, Dennis, again, I love your choice of words, the challenge, the opportunity, as possible. So I always see the opportunity, and in our challenges, I think we have to look at them that way. And Al, I thought you were going to tell the story that you and I were talking about when you and I came back from lunch about Condoleezza Rice. And I'll just leave it at this. I've been plowing through her No Higher Honor book, and she tells a story about the challenge with our negotiations with the Chinese back in the mid-2000s. And there are two characters, Wei and Li, and together they mean crisis. When you pull them apart, what they actually mean is danger and opportunity. And that she shared with the leaders in her team, with the president and others, that what they were facing looked like a crisis. There was danger, but they better get after the opportunity. So our team's actually been talking about that even in recent days. So as always, Dennis, thank you for bringing clarity to what we're supposed to be doing. We're nipping around the edges of what Bill, you and others have suggested, and more to come.
Very good discussion. Again, thank you, Jessica and Dr. Sauer. Appreciate that. We do have two academic degree programs on page 29 for expedited action. Are there any questions? I would ask for a motion to approve those. Second, move to second. All those in favor? Please, if I say aye, thank you all very much. You're ahead of me all. I know we didn't have a student success meeting recently, but Pepper, any report you'd like to share with the student success committee's activities?
Yes, we did meet in July, and Dr. Sauer presented to us the higher learning commission information about programs, teachers and their requirements in teaching dual credits, and it's a bit of a minefield, so we appreciated his update. And we had a presentation for the Indiana Adult Education and High School Equivalency from Marilyn Pizzuto. And that was very helpful in helping us see that there's an avenue of Hoosiers that we might be missing, tapping to bring into the higher education environment and help employers. So we meet again after our September meeting.
Very good. Thank you, Pepper, very much. Are there other items of old business? Or items of new business? And I would just have you consider all the additional information in your booklets, particularly the media things. And Allison, we really appreciate your email that you send out on a weekly basis, particularly highlighting some of the most significant stories. That's very helpful to do that. We have one additional item to do, a bit of business today. Each year we go through a nominating process and determine a slate of officers for 2022. And this year, the nominating committee is comprised of a member from each one of the 4-year classes that we have. So I represented 1 year, Chris Lamoth, another year, Dan Peterson and Ed Berger. So that group did meet, and we've reviewed our officer slate and are pleased to come forward with a recommendation that Judd Fisher be made our chair, Erica Studeman, our vice chair, and Ann Bowen being reappointed as our secretary. So I would first of all, are there any other nominations or any other discussion regarding the report from the nominating committee? And again, all three have agreed to serve in those roles, by the way, so we appreciate that. Now, I'd ask for a motion then for approval of that slate of officers for 2022.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Post same sign. And I would just close to say that it truly has been my honor and privilege to serve as chair of this really exceptional organization over the last 2 years. I've enjoyed it immensely. I've learned so much additional information as chair. You dig a little bit deeper into the weeds and you kind of have that onus on you to better understand what's going on. You actually read every word in the book every meeting as well too. So, but it really has been my pleasure. More importantly, it's been my pleasure to work with an exceptional staff at the Commission for Higher Education. And that was certainly under Commissioner Lovers and team, and now Commissioner Lowry and the team in place now. But it has given me the opportunity to work more closely with all of that group. Would particularly like to thank Liz Walker, who is the person that really is the liaison and interacts with the chair and helps me get up here and gives me my notes so that I know what to say and where to be and what to do. And she does an exceptional job of that, and I appreciate that. But I would suggest that all of our staff is just extraordinarily talented in the role that they play. We're working with the legislature or doing the research or doing the financial stuff. We have an exceptional team, and it's been my pleasure to really get to know that group more effectively. So again, thank you for that honor. And I now turn it over to the new chair, Judd Fisher.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks for your leadership and appreciate everything you've done. And you had a big change this past year with the commissioner change, and appreciate all you did to help me out with the search committee. And that was a great job. A quick story on that was with the governor. I think I've told a couple people this, but I was with the governor and he leaned over and said, "This is probably one of the biggest hires in the state in my 2 terms, so no pressure." So thanks again for your leadership, Mike. I wrote down a couple things I just want to say. I know everyone wants to get going, but well, first, I don't like to talk very much. I'm not as eloquent as some of the other chairs that you've seen, except for maybe I'm a little better than the one that was about 9 years ago. That was the first time I did this. But I don't like to talk much. I don't like to, in these types of settings, think there's business to be done. But I just wanted to go over a couple things because frequency wins is a comment that we have within our kind of a mantra within my office. I work for a family foundation. But I just had 4 things and then one fun fact for you. So 4 things. First one is really think we need to concentrate more on childcare and early childhood learning, and even at this level. And here's why: 90% of brain development takes place between 0 and 5 years. So we know that for a fact. We know that it's about $18,000 on average, at least in this county that you're sitting in now, to put a kid in childcare, a child in childcare. About 100,000 people that were in childcare in the United States have left since the pandemic started. They're gone from that. There is about a $19,200 salary, at least I think in this county. I don't know what the state is, but it's somewhere close to that. So just using, a rough item there. If you can get your kid in your own childcare center that you work in and you had to send them somewhere else, you have very little money left to pay off your education, your taxes, food, transportation, housing.
So we need to value these folks more. And I want to use a saying that my friend Chancellor Jeff Scott sent me. He said that we need to not just say high wage when we're talking about a lot of the things that you can do after you get your education when you go out into the world. And, you know, I was asking to see some of the amounts of salary you can make coming into certain professions. But we need to use the saying high wage and high impact in demand careers, in high demand careers. And so I think we need to say that because there's a lot of really, really good jobs out there that are never going to be those multi-million-dollar jobs. And so we need to look at childcare in that arena. We need to raise the salaries and we need to pay more attention. And one of the reasons is this, I guess it doesn't matter, because there's only one category that childcare in our society really affects. And it's got two subcategories, but the one category with the two subcategories, starting with the first subcategory, is it affects anyone that's 0 to 5 years old and anyone that's ever been 0 to 5 years old. It affects everything. And so I think we need to do some more things there. And as you know, 0 to 5-year-olds become students at in higher ed. So number two, I wrote these notes this morning. The commission members got to hear at lunch the connections Ball State's making with their infusion within within the industry and the community. And we've seen this for a long time. We've heard about it at this level at ITCHE. And so again, frequency wins. We've heard this so many times. I hear it all the time in my 15 years here now. 19 years in my work that I do in the workforce development realm. It's so important to have communication and relationships. And I'm still hearing from institutions, I don't know who to call an industry, and industry is saying I don't know who to call within the institutions in all of our areas throughout the state. And so we have to do better. We had I can't remember which conference it was, if it was, anyway, there was one several years ago, and we had a group of people that came down to communication and relationships that the schools and local industries didn't have it. And everyone's trying, but you have to have champions, and we heard that today. And Jeff McGee's is going to be doing a lot of that for Ball State, and that's exciting to hear. I'll tell you one quick story in this number two that I'm doing. Super 8 TV out of Madison, Indiana, is putting $16 million more into their business. They're expanding out. They have X amount of more employees they're hiring. But the important thing is they're putting a bunch of money, they're putting resources, they're putting dollars and attention into their K through 12 system. So they're not a consumer, just a consumer of the talent, but they are developing talent. And it's really cool to see that, because I just got to go down and see that a few months ago. But a few years ago, we got a presentation here at ITCHE about Super 8 TV and what they're doing in K through 12 and in higher ed. So it was really neat to see that they're just continuing to do the talent development and not just talent consumption. Number three is counseling. Counselors have too much to do, not enough resources, or too few of them. We've said that over and over. We need to figure that out. Again, I'm saying these things because, as you know, the commissioner is making stronger ties with K through 12 at DOE. And we've always had that, but Commissioner Lowry is taking that to another level. So I'm excited about that. But even in the stuff we do in this county that I do, from my seat that I sit in my office, is some funding for providing resources, and the counselors are just blown out of the water. And we have to help them because we keep layering things on them, and we're channeling these students through their office, or, well, they can't always see all the students, but they have too much to do, and we need to help that out with resources. Number four, that was number three. Number four, the college going rate, we keep talking about it. You know, I don't want to belabor that, but I thought it was really, really cool. At our last meeting, we talked about males for the first time. You've seen the articles, and it was thrown up in one of the slides, I think, Commissioner Lowry had. You know, I can tell you some stories about males coming out of high school and how they think right now, because I'm dealing with that very personally. And So anyway, I just think we need to continue to up our, talk about that, and frequency wins. I know we talked about it a couple times today already, the college going rate. We need to figure out how to get more people to go to college at the different levels, from the associate degree, bachelor's degree. And then, of course, look at the certificate programs. People on this planet like to get things in 2 clicks on their devices. And the max they will walk for something that they want is 1,000 steps, which if you're doing math is around a half mile. But the things they need, it's less. They fall off after 2 clicks looking for something, for things they need, healthcare, things like that, education. If they don't get to it in 2 clicks, they will stop looking for it. I thought it was important about the user experience and then the access that we've talked about from a couple different directions today. But we need to make sure that we can get students, potential students to keep going through college, and potential students to get there, or to find a career that takes education usually to get better at whatever they're going to do, whether it's plumbing or whatever. And so we just need to continue to talk about college going rate and how to get people to take a look at college. Fun facts, and I'll be done. Indiana University School of Medicine, Muncie, is the second largest satellite. No, it's the second largest, excuse me, after Indianapolis, in terms of cohort of med ed students in the state. So that's in the largest school of medicine in the country. Muncie has 60 plus med ed students here. Not many people know that. IU Health, the residency program, has 60 plus residents. That's the biggest residency program in the state and the second largest public health system in the country. IU School of Medicine, Muncie, and Ball State teamed up a couple years ago to do the bachelor's to MD program, which means if you do things right, you get in and accepted to the IU School of Medicine in Muncie campus when you get into Ball State for the BMD program, and you'll cut off 1 year of education. So you do about 7 years instead of 8. And so I think that's really important, because 80% of docs stay with, or I'm sorry, yeah, no, I think it's 80% of docs stay within 100 miles of where they're trained. And so hopefully we overflow with those med ed students staying here, and we push those out into the rest of the state and then into the rest of the Midwest, et cetera. So we have some great things going on here in this community that the members got to see a lot about today. But that's all I have, and I really appreciate all the work that the members do, and thanks a lot to the institutions and the partnerships and the collective effort we have going forward with making higher ed better.
Next meeting, September the 8th.
Next meeting, September the 8th. Motion to adjourn? Second? All in favor? We're adjourned.